The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday. I recognized Thomas's handwriting instantly, even after 16 years. Inside, tucked behind the cream cardstock, was a note in my mother's perfect cursive. "We know you've done well. Time to let go of childish grudges. Family is forever." My hands trembled as memories flooded back to that night when I was 13, when they drove me to a gas station 60 miles from home and told me to woman up. I haven't spoken to them since. The invitation transported me back to that October evening 16 years ago. I was 13, exhausted from another weekend of watching my 8-year-old brother Thomas, while my parents, Robert and Carol, went out for what they called their essential couple time. Every Friday and Saturday night, without fail, they'd dress up and disappear until 2 or 3 in the morning, leaving me with a list of instructions and a frozen pizza. That particular night started differently. I'd finally gathered the courage to speak up about missing my best friend Amy's 13th birthday party. It was supposed to be special, with a sleepover and everything Amy's mom had planned for months. I'd already missed 3 of her parties because of babysitting duties. "Stop being so selfish, Marion," my father said, without looking up from adjusting his tie. "Thomas is your responsibility. Family comes first." "But he's your son, not mine," I shot back, surprising myself with the boldness. "I'm 13. I should be at my friend's party, not playing mom every weekend." My mother's face turned cold. "You think you're so grown up? So independent? You have no idea what real responsibility means." They exchanged one of those looks that I now realize meant they'd already discussed this. Thomas was in the living room watching cartoons, oblivious to the storm brewing in the hallway. "Get in the car," my father ordered. "Where are we going?" I asked. But they were already heading to the garage. My mother told Thomas they'd be back soon and to watch TV until we returned. I remember thinking it was strange they'd leave him alone, but insisted I come with them. The drive was silent for the first 20 minutes. Then my father pulled off the highway and started talking about how ungrateful I was, how they'd given me everything, how other kids would kill for my privileges. My mother chimed in about sacrifice and family values. Their words blended together into a symphony of disappointment. When we stopped at the gas station off Highway 84, I thought they needed fuel. Instead, my father turned around and handed me a $5 bill. "Since you think you're so independent, find your own way home. Consider this a lesson in real life." My mother added, "When you're ready to appreciate your family and stop being selfish, you'll figure it out. Time to woman up, Marion." They drove away before I could process what was happening. The taillights of our Honda disappeared into the darkness, and I stood there holding that $5 bill, 60 miles from home, at 9:30 at night. The gas station attendant, a man in his 50s wearing a name tag that said Frank, watched me from behind the counter. I walked inside, my legs shaking, and asked to use the phone. "Sorry, kid," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Your parents called ahead. Said you're having some behavioral issues and need to learn about consequences. They specifically asked me not to let you call anyone. Said you'd probably try to manipulate me with tears." I did cry then. I begged him to let me call my grandmother, a friend, anyone. But Frank just shook his head and went back to his newspaper. "Your parents seemed real concerned about you," he said. "Sometimes tough love is necessary. They said you'd thank them later." The revelation that they'd planned this, actually called ahead to ensure I'd be stranded, hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a moment of anger or frustration. This was calculated. They'd orchestrated every detail of my abandonment. I spent $3 on a bottle of water and a bag of chips, saving the rest in case I needed it for an emergency. The bathroom was for customers only, and Frank made it clear I couldn't stay inside the store past 11 when he closed. Behind the building, I found a spot between the dumpster and the wall where I couldn't be seen from the road. I pulled my jacket tight around me and tried not to think about the sounds in the darkness, the smell of rotting garbage, or the way the concrete felt against my back. But what hurt most was the calculated cruelty of it all. As I sat there in the dark, Frank came out for a smoke break. I heard him on his phone, voice cracking. I know, Jennifer. I know I shouldn't have let you leave like that. Seeing this kid tonight, it reminds me of you. Her parents called ahead just like I did with your mom that night, told her not to help you. He was talking about his own daughter. The parallel was so clear it made my stomach turn. He'd done the same thing to his child, and now he was enabling my parents to do it to me. But something in his voice had changed. The confidence from earlier was gone, replaced by what sounded like regret. When he went back inside, I realized this wasn't just about teaching me a lesson. This was about breaking me. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow could have been danger. My phone had died hours ago. Not that it mattered since my parents had disconnected my service before leaving the house. Another detail I discovered when I'd tried to call for help earlier. When the sun finally came up, I was stiff, cold, and covered in dirt from the alley. I walked around to the front of the gas station, where Frank was just arriving for his morning shift. He wouldn't look at me directly, but I saw him place a coffee and a wrapped sandwich on the outside bench, then go inside without a word. I ate that sandwich like it was my last meal, trying to figure out my next move. That's when Diane pulled up in her 18-wheeler. She was everything my mother wasn't. Strong, independent, with calloused hands and an easy smile. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, her graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. When she saw me sitting on that bench, something in my face must have told her everything. "Rough night, honey?" she asked, sitting down beside me. I nodded, unable to speak without crying. "Parents?" she guessed, and when I nodded again, she sighed. "Let me guess. They decided you needed to learn a lesson about the real world?" Through tears, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking her head or muttering under her breath. When I finished, she stood up and walked into the gas station. I heard raised voices, though I couldn't make out the words. When she came back out, Frank was with her, looking ashamed. "This girl's 13 years old," Diane said to him. 13. What kind of man lets a child sleep behind a dumpster because her parents told him to? Frank mumbled something about not wanting to interfere with family business, but Diane cut him off. "Your Jennifer came through here 5 years ago, didn't she? Running from you and her mom after you pulled the same stunt? How'd that work out for you?" His face crumpled, and for a moment, I felt sorry for him. Diane turned back to me. "I'm heading to Sacramento, but I can drop you closer to home. Come on." In her truck, surrounded by the smell of coffee and diesel, I felt safe for the first time in hours. Diane told me her story as she drove. Her parents had kicked her out at 16 for refusing to marry the boy they'd chosen for her. She'd lived in her car for 2 years while finishing high school, then started driving trucks. Now, 25 years later, she owned her own company with 12 trucks and 15 employees. "But success isn't revenge, honey," she said. "Success is freedom. When you cut toxic people out of your life, you make room for real family. The kind you choose." She handed me her business card and a $50 bill. "For emergencies only. And when you turn 18, if you need a job, you call me. I don't forget kids who've been through hell." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the California landscape rolling by. Then Diane asked, "What do you think you'll find when you get home?" I wanted to believe my parents would be worried, that they'd spent the night regretting their decision. Maybe Thomas had asked where I was, and they'd realized they'd gone too far. But when Diane dropped me off 3 blocks from my house, my walk home revealed a different truth. Our house looked normal from the street, but as I got closer, I saw the boxes. My belongings were stacked on the front lawn in cardboard boxes labeled with my name in my mother's handwriting. My clothes, my books, my school projects, everything I owned sat there like garbage waiting for pickup. A note was taped to the top box. "When you're ready to apologize for your disrespect and appreciate your family, you can come back. Until then, consider yourself independent, just like you wanted." I looked up and saw Thomas watching from his bedroom window. He was crying, his small hand pressed against the glass. He mouthed something I couldn't make out, then someone pulled him away from the window. The curtain fell back into place. I stood there on the lawn I'd mowed every Saturday, in front of the house where I'd lived my entire life, and realized I wasn't just locked out. I was erased. Mrs. Henderson from next door came out, pretending to water her plants even though it was October. "Did you run away, Marion?" she asked, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Your parents are just devastated. They said you've been so troubled lately." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I started loading my boxes into a shopping cart I found abandoned near the corner. Each trip to that cart felt like another step away from who I used to be. But the real shock came when I found the manila envelope at the bottom of the last box. Inside were letters, all addressed to me, all unopened. They were from my grandmother Margaret, my father's mother, dating back 6 months. The most recent one was from just a week ago. I opened it with shaking hands. "Marion, dear, I've been trying to reach you. I know things are difficult with your parents. I've set aside money for your education. Please call me." There was a phone number I'd never seen before. My parents had been intercepting her letters, hiding them from me. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. This wasn't just about teaching me a lesson. This was about control, about making sure I had nowhere to turn. As I pushed that shopping cart down the street, my entire life fitting inside it, I made myself a promise. I would never beg them for anything again. I would never apologize for wanting to be treated like a person instead of free labor. And someday, somehow, I would make sure Thomas knew the truth. I spent the next 3 nights sleeping in the school library. I'd figured out that if I hid in the reference section during last period, the janitor never checked that area when he locked up. I'd sneak out early in the morning, shower in the gym, and show up to class like everything was normal. But Mrs. Patterson, my English teacher, noticed. She was the kind of teacher who actually saw her students, who remembered when you were absent and asked if you were okay. On the 4th day, she kept me after class. "Marion, where are you living?" I tried to lie, but she'd already seen through me. She'd noticed I was wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation, that I was doing homework by flashlight in the morning, that I'd fallen asleep in her class twice, even though I was her best student. She drove me to Child Protective Services herself, holding my hand as I told my story to a series of social workers who took notes and exchanged meaningful looks. By that evening, I was placed with the Andersons, a foster family who lived 40 minutes away from my old neighborhood. Gary and Linda Anderson seemed perfect at first. They had a nice house with a spare bedroom. They asked about my homework, and Linda packed me lunches for school. But something felt off about how much they knew about my situation. "Your parents are worried sick about you," Linda said one evening at dinner. "They just want what's best for you." "They locked me out," I reminded her. "They left me at a gas station." Gary and Linda exchanged looks. "Sometimes parents make tough choices out of love," Gary said. "Maybe if you tried to see their perspective." That night, I heard them on the phone. "Yes, Carol," Linda was saying. "She's doing fine. Still angry, of course. No, she hasn't mentioned the grandmother again. They were reporting to my mother. My foster parents were spying on me for the people who'd abandoned me." The next day at school, I tried to find Thomas. I knew he went to Riverside Elementary, just 2 blocks from my new high school. But when I got there, the secretary informed me there was a restraining order on file. I wasn't allowed within 500 feet of my brother. The paperwork she showed me was devastating. My parents had filed claims that I was disturbed and dangerous, that I'd threatened them, that Thomas was traumatized by my violent outbursts. None of it was true, but it was all there in black and white, official court documents that painted me as a monster. But I kept digging. Mrs. Patterson helped me request documents through the school counselor. What we found made everything clear. My parents were receiving disability payments for Thomas, claiming he had severe emotional trauma from my abandonment. $800 a month for his specialized care needs. Except, Thomas wasn't getting any specialized care. I knew this because Jennifer, Frank's daughter who'd returned to town and worked as a receptionist at Thomas's pediatrician's office, reached out to me. She'd heard about my situation through her father, who was drowning in guilt about that night. "Your brother hasn't been to a therapist ever," she told me over coffee one afternoon. Your parents cash those checks and tell everyone they're spending it on his treatment, but there's no record of him receiving any mental health services. Jennifer had her own story. 5 years ago, her parents had pulled the same tough love stunt, leaving her at that same gas station when she was 17. She'd ended up living with friends, putting herself through community college, and now she was 22, working and taking night classes to become a paralegal. My dad cries about it every night, she said. He knows he destroyed our family. When he saw you that night, it broke something in him. He wanted to help, but he was paralyzed by his own guilt. We became unlikely allies. Jennifer used her access to medical records to document the lack of treatment Thomas was supposedly receiving. I used the school library to research fraud and custody laws. Together, we were building something, though I wasn't sure what yet. The Andersons, meanwhile, were getting bolder in their surveillance. I found recording devices in my room, discovered they were going through my backpack while I slept. When I confronted them, Linda didn't even deny it. Your mother is my second cousin, she finally admitted. Family helps family. You'll understand when you're older. I started keeping everything important in my school locker. I opened a bank account the day I turned 14 with the $50 Diane had given me, and got a job at a local diner, lying about my age. Every dollar I earned went into that account. Every document Jennifer helped me find went into a safety deposit box I rented with my first paycheck. But the real breakthrough came when my grandmother Margaret finally found me. She showed up at my school one day, having hired a private investigator to track me down. She was nothing like my father, her son, where he was cold and calculating. She was warm and fierce. I've been fighting to see you for 2 years, she said, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. Your parents have been telling everyone I have dementia, that I'm not safe around children, but I've been documenting everything, Marion. Every lie, every forged signature, every fraudulent claim. She showed me a binder 3 inches thick. Financial records showing my parents had been claiming me as a dependent on their taxes, while simultaneously collecting foster care prevention funds by saying I still lived with them. Forged documents with my signature agreeing to support Thomas's medical needs. False insurance claims for therapy sessions that never happened. They've stolen over $30,000 in the past year alone, Margaret said, and that's just what I can prove. But it was the last document that stopped my heart. An email from my mother to Linda Anderson. Keep her stable until she's 18. Once she ages out of the system, she'll have nowhere to go and will have to come back. Then, she'll sign whatever we need her to sign. They weren't just controlling me. They were planning to trap me, to use my desperation at 18 to make me legally responsible for their fraudulent debts. The foster placement with their relatives was just another cage, designed to look like care while keeping me under their thumb. That night, I called Diane from a payphone. I need that job, I said, as soon as I'm legal to work. Honey, she replied, you've got more than a job waiting for you. You've got a future. By 17, I had transformed my pain into purpose. While living with my third foster family, the Johnsons, who were actually decent people with no connection to my parents, I threw myself into my studies. I was working 3 jobs: the diner on weekends, tutoring kids after school, and cleaning offices at night with a crew that didn't ask too many questions about my age. Every teacher at Lincoln High knew my story, or at least parts of it. Mrs. Patterson had become my unofficial guardian angel, making sure I had access to AP classes, fee waivers for college applications, and a quiet place to study when the foster home got too chaotic. She wrote me a recommendation letter that made me cry, calling me the most resilient student she'd encountered in 30 years of teaching. The acceptance letter from Northwestern University came on a Tuesday in March. Full scholarship for their engineering program, including room, board, and a stipend for books. I sat in the school bathroom and sobbed for 20 minutes, clutching that letter like it might disappear. That night, I got another letter that changed everything. It was from Thomas, now 12, smuggled out through his friend's older sister who worked at the diner where I waitressed. "Dear Marion," it began in his messy handwriting, "I know the truth now. I heard Mom and Dad talking about what they did to you. They think I'm asleep, but I listen to everything. They lie about you all the time. They tell people you're crazy, but I remember you taking care of me. You were the only one who really loved me. I miss you every day. Please don't forget about me." I wrote back immediately, sending the letter through the same chain. I told him about college, about my dreams of becoming an engineer, about how I'd never stopped loving him. Jennifer helped me set up a secret email account for him, and we started corresponding every week. Through Thomas's emails, I learned the full extent of my parents' lies. They were telling everyone I'd joined a cult, that I'd been arrested multiple times, that they were heartbroken but had to protect Thomas from my influence. Meanwhile, they were using the money supposedly for his therapy to take vacations. Thomas was being raised by a rotating cast of babysitters, while they lived their best life on government assistance and sympathy donations from church members. 2 weeks before graduation, everything imploded. I was called to the principal's office to find my parents sitting there with a lawyer. They looked older, grayer, but their eyes held the same cold calculation I remembered. "Marion," my mother said, as if we'd spoken yesterday instead of 4 years ago, "we need to discuss your responsibilities to your family." They proceeded to present documents showing I'd agreed to support Thomas's ongoing medical needs once I turned 18. The signatures were forgeries, but good ones. They claimed that as part of my scholarship, I needed parental consent, and they wouldn't give it unless I signed over part of my future earnings to Thomas's care. The principal, Mr. Rodriguez, looked uncomfortable. "These are serious allegations," he said to me. "They're claiming you owe them over $40,000 in back support." "For a child I haven't been allowed to see in 4 years?" I asked. "For therapy that never happened? For a brother they won't even let me contact?" My father slammed his hand on the desk. "You ungrateful little witch. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, and this is how you repay us? You left me at a gas station when I was 13, I said calmly. You locked me out. You put my belongings on the lawn. They claimed I was lying, that I'd run away, that they'd been searching for me desperately. Their lawyer produced witness statements from neighbors saying they'd seen my parents crying, putting up missing posters, begging for information about their troubled daughter. Except I had receipts. Real ones. Jennifer and I had been preparing for this moment for 2 years. I pulled out my phone and played the recording she'd gotten from her father. It was from that night at the gas station, Frank talking to my parents on the phone. "Yeah, she's here. No, I won't let her call anyone, just like you asked. You sure about this? She's just a kid. Okay, your family, your choice." Then I produced the emails between my mother and Linda Anderson, the ones Margaret had found. The financial records showing fraud, the disability payments for Thomas that never went to his care, 17 different documents they'd forged with my signature. Their lawyer went pale. "This is extortion," he said to my parents. "You didn't tell me any of this." But they weren't done. My mother stood up, tears streaming down her face in a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Fine," she said. "Keep your money, but you'll never see Thomas again. We'll make sure of that." That's when I played my ace. Thomas walked into the office. He was taller than I remembered, gangly in that preteen way, but his eyes were the same. He looked at our parents with a mixture of disappointment and determination. "I'm done lying for you," he said to them. "I have recordings too. 3 years worth. You coaching me on what to say about Marion. You laughing about the money you get from my fake therapy. You calling her names and making up stories." Our parents' faces went from shock to rage to fear in the span of seconds. Thomas had been working with Catherine, a documentary filmmaker who'd been investigating family fraud for a project. She'd connected with him through his school counselor, who'd noticed discrepancies in his supposed trauma treatment. Thomas had been wearing a wire to family dinners for 6 months. Northwestern called that afternoon to confirm my scholarship was secure and that they were aware of my family situation. Diane had made some calls to alumni she knew, and they'd flagged my file for special protection. The university offered me early move-in and campus jobs to help me get established before classes started. As I walked across the stage at graduation, I saw my parents in the audience. They were there to make a scene, to play the role of heartbroken parents for the crowd, but they were surrounded by FBI agents in plain clothes, waiting for the ceremony to end. My grandmother Margaret was there too, in the front row, crying real tears of pride. Diane had driven in from Sacramento. Jennifer and Frank sat together, their relationship slowly healing. Mrs. Patterson wore her biggest smile. Even the Johnsons, my current foster parents, came to cheer. But the best moment was when Thomas broke away from our parents and ran to me after I received my diploma. He hugged me in front of everyone and said loud enough for the whole auditorium to hear, "I'm proud of you, Marion. You're my real family." Northwestern University was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. For the first time in my life, I was just Marion, not the girl whose parents abandoned her, not the foster kid, not the survivor. I was a student, an engineer in training, a young woman building her future. I excelled in my classes, driven by a hunger that my privileged classmates couldn't understand. While they complained about 8 a.m. lectures, I was grateful for every moment in those halls. I worked in the campus machine shop, tutored calculus, and spent summers interning at engineering firms, saving every penny. Diane kept her promise about a job. During winter breaks, I drove trucks for her company, earning more in a month than I'd made in a year at the diner. She taught me about business, about building something from nothing, about turning survival into success. By graduation, I had 3 job offers. I chose Morrison Engineering in Chicago, a firm known for innovation and for promoting women in leadership. My starting salary was more money than my parents had ever made, honestly. I found a small apartment, bought professional clothes from consignment stores, and began building my life. Thomas and I never lost touch. Through Jennifer's help and Catherine's documentation project, we maintained our secret correspondence. I sent money to a trust account Jennifer managed for him, ensuring he had what he needed for school, clothes, and the therapy he actually did need to process our parents' abuse. At 25, I took the biggest risk of my life. With Diane as my primary investor and mentor, I started my own consulting firm, Resilient Engineering Solutions. The name was Diane's idea. She said it was perfect for both the structures I designed and the life I'd built. The company grew faster than I'd imagined. Within 3 years, I had 12 employees, contracts with major corporations, and a reputation for solving impossible problems. I specialized in structural assessments for buildings that had survived disasters, finding strength in damage, beauty in survival. Frank, who'd spent years trying to atone for that night at the gas station, became an unexpected part of my chosen family. He'd sobered up, reconciled with Jennifer, and opened his station as a safe haven for runaway teens. I funded a program there, providing phones, warm meals, and connections to resources for kids in crisis. He called it Marion's Stand, though I'd asked him not to use my name. Life was good, better than good. I'd built everything my parents said I'd never have. Success, family, love. I'd even met James, a fellow engineer who understood my past without pitying me, who loved my sharp edges as much as my soft heart. We married in a small ceremony with our chosen family, Thomas standing as my man of honor, wearing a suit I'd bought him for his college graduation. Then, last week, everything changed. The invitation arrived at my office, expensive cream paper with gold embossing, Thomas's wedding. I hadn't even known he was dating anyone seriously. We still talked every week, but he'd been cagey lately, saying he had something big to tell me, but it had to be in person. Inside the invitation was the note from our parents, their first direct communication in over a decade. "We know you've done well. Time to let go of childish grudges. Family is forever." But there was another envelope, marked "Open this second." Inside, Thomas's handwriting. "Marion, trust me. Everything is not what it seems. I need you there. Bring everyone. Bring lawyers. This is our chance to end this properly. I love you. P.S. Catherine says to wear something powerful." That evening, I received a legal summons. My parents were suing me for elderly abuse and abandonment, seeking damages of $2 million, claiming I destroyed their reputation, caused them emotional distress, and owed them support as their successful child. They'd timed it to arrive with the wedding invitation, a 1-2 punch designed to knock me off balance. The lawsuit was comprehensive. They'd hired an expensive legal team, funded by who knows what scheme. They claimed I'd stolen money meant for Thomas's care, that I'd turned him against them, that my success was built on family resources I'd taken without permission. They wanted half my company, damages for defamation, and monthly support payments for the rest of their lives. But the real shock was in the details. They'd been documenting my success for years, keeping track of every contract, every award, every dollar my company earned. They knew about my marriage to James, about the trust fund for Thomas, about every donation I'd made to Frank's program. They'd been watching, waiting, planning. James found me crying in our kitchen that night, holding the lawsuit papers. "They want to take everything I built," I said. "After all these years, they still want to break me." He held me, then said something that changed my perspective. "No, they want to break the woman they think you are, but they don't know who you've become. The 13-year-old girl they left at that gas station doesn't exist anymore. You're Marion, who conquered impossible odds. You're Marion, who builds bridges where others see only gaps. You're Marion, who turned abandonment into abundance." I called Thomas that night. His voice was steady, determined. "Marion, I've been planning this for 2 years with Catherine," he said. "The wedding is real, but it's also a trap. For them, not for you. I know what they've done, all of it. The fraud, the lies, the newest schemes. Catherine's been documenting everything. We're going to end this, publicly, finally, but I need you to trust me." "How bad is it?" I asked. "They've stolen $400,000 over 16 years through various frauds. They're currently under investigation by the IRS, but they don't know it yet. The FBI has been building a case, but we needed them to make one more big move. This lawsuit is it. This is them admitting they've been watching you, stalking you, planning to take what's yours." I thought about that 13-year-old girl, sleeping behind a dumpster, scared and alone. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, surrounded by chosen family, successful beyond my wildest dreams, loved and respected. "Tell me what you need me to do," I said. "Come to the wedding. Bring everyone. Bring proof of everything. And Marion, bring the recording from the gas station. It's time everyone heard it." I looked at the invitation again. The venue was the grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel, the fanciest place in our old hometown. They'd invited 300 guests, including all my clients, professional contacts, and even journalists who'd written about my company. They wanted an audience for my humiliation. They were going to get an audience for their downfall. The day of the wedding arrived sunny and clear, one of those perfect California days that makes everything look like a movie set. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for my first major client presentation, navy blue, with a subtle pinstripe that meant business. James stood beside me, looking handsome in his charcoal gray suit, his hand steady on my back as we walked toward the hotel. Our entire chosen family had assembled. Diane drove in with 3 of her drivers, all women who'd escaped bad situations and built new lives. Jennifer arrived with Frank, who looked healthier than I'd ever seen him, 5 years sober and determined to make amends. My grandmother, Margaret, now 84 but still fierce, held court near the entrance with her lawyer, and 2 FBI agents posing as her nurses. Mrs. Patterson had come with Mr. Rodriguez and several other teachers from my old high school. The Johnsons, my last foster family, brought their own children, now grown, who'd become like siblings to me. Even Catherine's film crew was there, disguised as wedding videographers. The ballroom was spectacular. My parents had spent a fortune they didn't have on this show. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, a string quartet playing softly. They'd seated my professional contacts at prominent tables, ensuring everyone would witness whatever they'd planned. I saw them before they saw me. Robert and Carol, playing the role of devoted parents of the groom, greeting guests with practiced smiles. They looked prosperous in their expensive clothes, funded by years of fraud and theft. My mother wore diamonds I knew she couldn't afford, honestly. My father glad-handed my clients like he'd been part of my success all along. Then they saw me. My mother's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine before landing on false joy. She rushed toward me, arms outstretched, voice pitched to carry. "Marion, our darling daughter, you came. We knew you couldn't miss your brother's special day. Family is everything, isn't it?" The room was watching. This was their moment, their stage. They expected me to play along to avoid a scene or to lash out and look unstable. Instead, I stepped back from her embrace and spoke clearly, calmly. "Hello, Carol, Robert. Thank you for inviting my husband and me. We're here for Thomas." My mother's eye twitched at my use of their first names, but she recovered quickly. She turned to the watching crowd, tears forming on cue. "Our Marion has been distant since she left for college. We tried so hard to stay in touch, but she was so focused on her career. We're just grateful she's here now, that our family can finally heal." Several guests made sympathetic noises. My clients looked uncomfortable. This was the performance they'd choreographed, painting me as the cold, ambitious daughter who'd abandoned her loving family. Robert stepped forward, voice booming with false warmth. "Marion's success is the family's success. We're so proud of everything she's built. After all, we taught her everything about hard work and determination." I smiled, the same smile I used in hostile negotiations. "Speaking of which, I understand you've filed a lawsuit claiming I owe you $2 million. Should we discuss that now, in front of everyone, or wait until after the ceremony?" The room went silent. My mother's mask slipped for just a second, showing the rage underneath. "This isn't the time," she hissed. "When is the time?" I asked, my voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "When you left me at a gas station at 13? When you locked me out and put my belongings on the lawn? When you told my brother I abandoned him? When you collected disability payments for his trauma that you caused? When you committed fraud in my name?" "Lies," my father said, but his voice shook. "Our daughter has always had problems with reality. We tried to get her help, but she refused." That's when Thomas appeared at the top of the stairs, his fiancée Catherine beside him. But he wasn't in a tuxedo. He was in a simple suit, holding a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice clear and strong, "thank you for coming to what you thought was my wedding. Catherine and I were actually married last month in a small ceremony with our real family. Today isn't about celebrating our union. It's about ending a lie that's gone on for 16 years. The screens around the ballroom, meant for wedding photos, came to life. They showed documents, financial records, emails. Thomas narrated as the evidence played. "My parents told you Marion abandoned our family. Here's the truth. When she was 13, they drove her to a gas station 60 miles away and left her there. She spent the night behind a dumpster. Here's the security footage." The grainy video played. You could see young me, clearly a child, crying as my parents drove away. You could see me trying to use the phone, being turned away. You could see me curled up behind the building as night fell. The room gasped collectively. My client stared at my parents in horror, but Thomas wasn't done. They locked her out the next day, put her belongings on the lawn, filed false reports saying she was dangerous to keep her away from me. Meanwhile, they collected $30,000 in disability payments, claiming I was traumatized by her abandonment. I never saw a penny of that money or a minute of therapy. More documents flashed on screen. Forged signatures, fraudulent insurance claims, tax documents showing they claimed me as a dependent while I was in foster care. They've stolen over $400,000 through various schemes, Thomas continued. They've been planning to sue Marion for her success for years, tracking her every achievement, waiting for the right moment. Well, this is the right moment, but not for them. That's when the FBI agents stood up, badges visible. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, you're under arrest for fraud, tax evasion, child abandonment, and extortion. My parents tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The room was full of witnesses, cameras, and federal agents. As they were being handcuffed, my mother screamed at me, "You planned this. You poisoned Thomas against us. You've destroyed our lives." I walked up to her, close enough that only she could hear me. "No," I said. "You destroyed your own lives the night you taught a 13-year-old girl that family meant nothing. I just survived long enough to watch it happen." As they were led away, something incredible happened. The room erupted in applause. My clients, my colleagues, everyone who'd been uncomfortable and confused, they were clapping for Thomas. For me, for justice finally served. Catherine took the microphone. "Since we're all here and the food's paid for, why don't we celebrate the real family? The one Marion built from nothing. The one that shows up, that loves unconditionally, that never abandons anyone." The string quartet started playing again. The mood shifted from shock to celebration. Thomas hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry it took so long," he whispered. "I had to wait until I could protect myself, until I had Catherine, until we had enough evidence. But I never forgot that you loved me, even when they told me every day that you didn't." The rest of the reception was surreal. We ate food my parents had paid for with stolen money. We danced to music they'd chosen for their performance. But instead of their lies, we celebrated truth. Instead of their version of family, we honored the real bonds we'd built. Frank stood up to speak, his voice rough with emotion. 16 years ago, I failed a young girl who needed help. I let her sleep outside because her parents told me to. It was the worst night of my life. After the night, I did the same thing to my own daughter. But Marion and Jennifer forgave us. They taught us that redemption is possible, that chosen family can heal what blood family breaks. Diane spoke about finding me on that bench, about watching me grow from a traumatized child to a successful woman. She announced that I was now a full partner in her company, that we were expanding nationwide to help more kids aging out of foster care find careers in trucking and logistics. My grandmother Margaret, despite her age, commanded the room. "My son and his wife are criminals," she said bluntly. "But my granddaughter is a phoenix. She rose from the ashes they created and built something beautiful. The money they stole? Marion's already earned 10 times that. The family they destroyed? She's built a better one. The future they tried to steal? She's created one they could never imagine." Even Mr. Rodriguez, my old principal, spoke. "In 30 years of education, I've never seen someone overcome what Marion overcame. She didn't just survive, she thrived. And she did it while helping others, while building programs for abandoned kids, while refusing to become bitter. That's not just success. That's heroism." As the evening wound down, I stood with my real family, looking around the room my parents had meant to be my humiliation. Instead, it had become my vindication. 6 months have passed since that unforgettable wedding that wasn't a wedding. The FBI investigation revealed even more than we'd known. Robert and Carol had defrauded multiple government programs, filed false insurance claims, and even sold fictional sob stories about their missing daughter to magazines for money. The total amount exceeded $400,000, over 16 years. They were both sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. The judge, a woman who'd also been in foster care, didn't mince words during sentencing. She called their actions a grotesque betrayal of parental duty and said she'd rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. Thomas legally changed his last name to Morrison, taking the name I'd used when I married James. He graduated from medical school last month, choosing to specialize in pediatric psychiatry. He wants to help kids who've been traumatized by the people who were supposed to protect them. Catherine's documentary about family fraud won 3 awards and led to changes in how child welfare cases are investigated. The gas station where everything started has been transformed. Frank turned it into a 24-hour safe haven called Marion's Stand, despite my protests about the name. It has clean beds, hot showers, phones, and counselors on call. Diane and I fund it together, and Jennifer runs the overnight program. In its first 6 months, we've helped 47 kids get off the streets and into safe situations. Frank keeps a photo from our ribbon-cutting ceremony where he's crying and hugging me, finally forgiven, finally at peace. My engineering firm has tripled in size. The publicity from the wedding revelation, though initially embarrassing, actually brought in clients who valued resilience and integrity. We specialize in rebuilding after disasters, in finding strength in damaged structures, in creating beauty from broken things. The metaphor isn't lost on anyone. James and I bought a house with 5 bedrooms. Not for the children we're planning, though we're working on that, but for the teenagers who need emergency placement. We're licensed foster parents now, specializing in kids whose parents have abandoned them. Our current foster daughter, Ashley, is 15 and reminds me so much of myself at that age. She's brilliant, angry, and determined to prove she doesn't need anyone. We're teaching her that needing people isn't weakness, that chosen family is real family, that survival is just the first step toward thriving. My grandmother Margaret lived to see my parents convicted. She passed peacefully 2 months ago at 85, surrounded by the family she'd claimed despite her son's failures. She left everything to Thomas and me. But more importantly, she left us letters she'd written over the years when she couldn't reach us. In mine, she wrote, "You became the woman I always knew you could be, not despite what they did to you, but because you refused to let it define you." Mrs. Patterson retired last year, but she still comes to Sunday dinners at our house. She's teaching Ashley the same way she taught me, with fierce love and unwavering belief. The Johnsons, my last foster parents, have become grandparents to every kid who passes through our doors. They showed me that foster parents can be real parents, that love doesn't require blood. Last week I received a letter from Carol in prison. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was exactly what you'd expect. Blame, manipulation, fake apology, and a request for money. I didn't respond, but I did something else. I put the letter in a frame and hung it in my office next to the original wedding invitation. Not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I've come. People sometimes ask me if I forgive my parents. The answer is complicated. I don't forgive them for what they did to 13-year-old me. That little girl deserved parents who loved her, who protected her, who saw her as more than free labor. But I thank them for what they taught me through their cruelty. They taught me that family isn't about blood. They taught me that love is action, not words. They taught me that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them the first time. They wanted me to woman up at 13. Instead, I learned to human up, to build connection from isolation, abundance from scarcity, love from abandonment. Every success in my life sprouted from the ashes of that night behind the dumpster. Every real relationship grew from the space left by their absence. The trust fund I created for Thomas has become something bigger. The Phoenix Foundation now helps abandoned teens throughout California. We provide emergency housing, legal aid, educational support, and most importantly, belief. Belief that they matter. Belief that their past doesn't determine their future. Belief that chosen family is waiting for them. Diane, now 70, is still driving trucks and mentoring young women. She says I'm her legacy, but the truth is we saved each other. She gave me hope when I had none, a future when mine was stolen. Now we give that same gift to others, creating a chain of chosen family that gets stronger with each link. Jennifer runs support groups for children of narcissistic parents. She and Frank have rebuilt their relationship through years of therapy and honest conversation. Their story gives me hope that some families can heal, even if mine couldn't. The wedding venue where everything came to light has become oddly symbolic for me. Last month, James and I renewed our vows there, surrounded by our real family. Thomas was my man of honor again. Ashley was my flower girl, rolling her eyes at the sentimentality but secretly loving it. Foster kids we've helped over the years came back to celebrate. The room was full of people who'd chosen to love each other, despite having every reason not to trust again. During the ceremony, I thought about that 13-year-old girl behind the dumpster. If I could go back and tell her one thing, it would be this. Tonight is not your ending, it's your beginning. Every person who fails you is making room for someone who won't. Every door that closes is pointing you toward one that will open. You will build a life so beautiful that your pain becomes purpose, your trauma becomes triumph, your abandonment becomes abundance. The greatest revenge isn't success, though success feels good. The greatest revenge is happiness. It's looking at your life and realizing that the people who hurt you are footnotes in your story, not main characters. It's understanding that they gave you the one gift they never meant to give. Freedom. Freedom to choose your family. Freedom to define your worth. Freedom to love without conditions or manipulation. My parents thought leaving me at that gas station would break me. Instead, it forged me. They thought taking everything would leave me with nothing. Instead, it taught me to build everything from nothing. They thought abandonment would make me weak. Instead, it made me unbreakable. To anyone listening who's been abandoned, rejected, or told you're not enough by the people who should love you most, hear this. Your worth isn't determined by the people who couldn't see it. Your future isn't limited by the people who tried to steal it. Your family isn't restricted to the people who share your blood. Sometimes the family you're born into is just the starting point. The real family, the one that matters, is the one you build with people who show up, who stay, who love you, not despite your broken pieces, but because of how beautifully you've reassembled them. My name is Marion Morrison. I was abandoned at 13. I slept behind a dumpster. I survived foster care. I was sued by my parents for my success, and I won. Not just the lawsuit, but life. I won by refusing to let their cruelty make me cruel. I won by building love from loneliness. I won by becoming everything they said I'd never be, and more than they could ever imagine. The wedding invitation that started this final chapter still sits on my desk, but its meaning has transformed. It's no longer evidence of their manipulation, but proof of justice. It brought me back not to reconcile with the family that hurt me, but to celebrate the family that healed me. It ended not with their victory, but with their conviction. It proved that sometimes the best revenge really is a life well lived, surrounded by people who actually know how to love. What would you do if your family abandoned you? Would you let it break you, or would you let it build you? Have you found your chosen family, the people who show up when blood relatives disappear? I'd love to hear your stories of resilience, of chosen families, of building beauty from brokenness. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that abandonment isn't the end. Like this video if you believe in the power of chosen family. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over trauma. And comment below with your own experiences of finding family in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to leave toxic family behind and the wisdom to recognize real family when they find you. Remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and belonging, exactly as you are. Never let anyone, especially family, convince you otherwise.